All right, everybody, we're back on Skywatchers Radio right here on psn-radio.com. And like I promised, we have the one and only Mr. Robert Morningstar on the line with us. And he has been listening in, and he has a thing to say about what we were talking about here with dealing with Trump and Lying Ted and Lying Ted's daddy. Welcome to the show, Robert. Welcome back, my friend.
Hi, it's great to be back. It was great to listen to you. You brought up some really amazing things, and I'm ready.
Thank you.
Matt, let's talk about the UFO thing that you were talking about, first of all. I didn't know Chris Matthews covered it today, but yesterday I was downstairs with my mom and having lunch, and I was amazed that MSNBC did a half-hour show on Area 51 and the alien interview. And I said to myself, what is going on? MSNBC, the interview where the alien is being interviewed by a telepath and then he gets sick?
What show?
Right, and he dies on camera, supposedly.
Yeah, what show on MSNBC?
Oh, it was in the middle of the day. I don't know which.
Wow.
They just dedicated a whole half hour. And, the guy, the leaker, Victor, in the background.
Yes. Yep.
I said, what? And I'm in close contact with Stephen Bassett, and interestingly enough, on my birthday, I published one of his paradigm research articles about Hillary Clinton, saying that she was going to leak the UFO stories if she got the information. And it was 2 days before the Benghazi hearing, and won't you know it, the next day, just as everybody's jumping onto UFO Digest to read it, we got hacked, and we got knocked off the air for 8 days. So
I remember when you said you got hacked.
Oh, it's 8 times in a year. And every time we put out the last time was last week, we put out UFOs and Nukes, Robert Hastings. The most important issue, the one that drives the military up the wall, the one they dread to reveal to the world public, is that UFOs have made it very clear that they're not going to let anyone destroy the world through nuclear war. UFOs have come over missile bases. The Rendlesham Forest incident is called Rendlesham Forest because they want to bring your attention to the forest instead of Bentwaters RAF, Royal Air Force Base, which was a nuclear weapons depot. The Minot, South Dakota Air Force Base, Maelstrom was another one. The UFOs come in, they disable missiles, they start to launch them, but the most amazing thing is they change the targeting on the missiles. And that's telling Washington and Moscow, if you think you're going to fire this missile and it's going to land in Moscow, don't be surprised if we send it to you in Washington.
Wow.
That's a little present for you.
That is a warning. Another story that I broke last week is one that's been going on for years with the U.S. Navy. All atomic missile submarines are all being tracked by UFOs. And the first telling of this story is in the book called Out There by Ralph Blum. It came out in the 1980s. And the first chapter talks about how the U.S. military was using remote viewers like Ingo Swann and targeting military facilities. So they decided to target a submarine. And the remote viewer found the submarine under the Atlantic Ocean, and then the remote viewer went into shock because he also saw the UFO tailing it. So this is a big issue. There, in a sense, there's one.
Isn't that a USO now, not a UFO?
No, the submarine was underwater. The UFO was over it in the atmosphere.
Oh, so it was outside of the water. It was tailing from
now, talking
the air.
about USOs, on May 2nd, the people in Yorkshire, England, were driven into panic practically because so many loud explosions were detonating over Yorkshire in the city of Leeds, the city of York, that some people thought it was an atomic attack or terrorists detonating bombs. And it turns out that the RAF scrambled 2 Typhoon fighters to go to intercept a UFO that came out of the ocean. And they ran circles around it. They tried to kind of, shepherd it in, and the thing took off. But it went on for quite a long time, and some people recorded CCD cameras and iPhones recorded some of these detonations of the the breaking of the sound barrier at low altitude, rattling windows. So it's become a big issue. And Stephen Bassett has told me that they expect this year that Obama, being the lame duck that he is, has been chosen as the one to make the UFO disclosure, or Clinton. And I said to him,
what if Clinton doesn't win, though? That's
I said to him, I'd rather wait another 50 years for disclosure than to see Clinton as the next. Okay, let's talk about Trump. I just sent you an article from Dave Hodges' website, the Common Sense Radio Show.
Uh-huh.
The CFR has declared war on Donald Trump, and he quotes some of the editorials that they've put out. People dread him. They dread Donald Trump and Bernie. You know what's interesting? I've been deeply involved in this campaign since it started, and one thing that I picked up very early is the confusion, the puzzlement of the mass media, because they were going out and polling people and saying to people, "Well, who's your first choice for president?" And a person would say Donald Trump. And they say, "Who's your second choice?" And they'd say Bernie Sanders. Then they'd go to another person and say, "Who's your first choice for president?" And they say Bernie Sanders. And who would you vote for second? They say Donald Trump. So people are fed up with the scripted, fork-tongued, lying politicians. And
not that we're singling any candidate out as we say this.
Well, let me just say this.
Really?
I've been eavesdropping. It's just uncanny. A few minutes before 10:30, I just said, let me see what they're chatting about. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Nancy who said, ask Robert about Ted Cruz's father.
Yeah.
Was it Nancy or was it Crystal?
It was Nancy.
It was Nancy. I thought it was Nancy. So
we're clones, actually, so we kind of share a common core.
Yeah. she tells anti-feminist jokes,
I love it. I
love your show. Listen, so let me just give you the lowdown on the Ted Cruz story. I have a vast network of associates, of friends, of supporters, of colleagues who really believe in what I do and support what I do. I have a very good friend named David Collins, and he sent me the Marshall Report. Diane Marshall has a blog. And on that blog was the first time that I saw Ted Cruz's father, Ted Cruz Sr., handing out pamphlets with Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans in 1963, August of 63. A very famous incident. I've been looking at the pictures for years. She published pictures of the old Cruz and the man in the Oswald photographs. And as I've told you before, one of the greatest things I have ever learned from the Chinese masters was Chinese physiognomy and face reading diagnosis. And there are 77, 80 points on the face and relationships between the ear, the brow, the chin, the jaw, and the nose that will identify a person. And the moment that I saw those two pictures, I said to myself, this is the same man. So I put out an initial email to the top researchers in the JFK assassination, and Judith Vary Baker, who was Lee Oswald's paramour, was also at that incident. She was going out with Oswald at the time that he was handing out the pamphlets, and he told her, "Hey, don't get too close. I don't want you to be involved in this." And she and I got into contact, and she confirms that it is Ted Cruz Sr. A little background on Ted Cruz Sr. Claims to have fought against the Batista regime and to have been beaten up by the Batista police. He then fought on the side of Castro during the Castro revolution.
Right.
He then claims to have left in 1957-58, come to the United States and gone to Texas. Mm-hmm. And in Texas, he wound up going to the University of Texas at Austin and getting a degree in mathematics. He then became employed in the oil industry. Ted Cruz says, these are Ted Cruz's words, "My father was a Molotov cocktail throwing, factory burning guerrilla." Okay? Now that means to me that he was Molotov cocktail throwing for Castro, but more likely
right.
Molotov cocktail throwing and factory burning operative Operation Mongoose. But I believe, personally, his story is very fishy. He says that he left Cuba before Castro declared himself communist, that he then went back to Cuba, and that he went around speaking and apologizing to all the people that he had convinced to follow Castro. And I say that is total hokum, because if Ted Cruz Sr. had gone back after Castro took power and started speaking and saying, I'm sorry that I asked you to follow Castro, apologizing, he would never have left Cuba alive.
Correct.
So I believe that he was a double agent, but that ultimately the good life in America, the riches that were conferred upon him by the Bush oil cabal, convinced him that he saw the light. And I believe that he was involved in Operation Mongoose, and he was involved in the anti-Castro Cuban movement, which Oswald infiltrated. Oswald was sent to New Orleans and to Dallas to infiltrate both pro-Castro factions and anti-Castro factions, and to report back to the Office of Naval Intelligence.
But was he involved with the JFK assassination in any way directly?
No, he tried to save President Kennedy. He found out about the plot, and he got word back. He actually, it's believed that he's the one who sent the telegram to the FBI on November 1st, and warning them that there was a plot to kill President Kennedy in Dallas. Lee Oswald was a hero. I'm telling you frankly. Lee Oswald was a hero. He died for his country. He did everything in his power to save President Kennedy. You should interview Judith Vary Baker. He told her. He knew this before.
I'm confusing her with the mistress of JFK.
No. Judith Vary Baker was, let's call it what it was. She was the girlfriend, the lover of Lee Oswald. Judith Exner is the person.
Exner.
She was the gangster gun mall of Sam Giancana.
Okay, confusion.
So, it's very confusing. So a lot of names, and you have to keep a score. You have to keep a scorecard to keep track of all the players. But,
Bob, do you have feelings on the whole? What kind of politics are going on behind the scenes when you say that the Council of Foreign Relations, they're not psyched about Trump?
Of course.
What can you elaborate on that further?
Sure. The Council on Foreign Relations was the first Rockefeller front for globalization, and Donald Trump is anti-globalism. He is a nationalist. He's seen from behind the scenes. He played the game to become a multimillionaire. But listen, Donald Trump and I are New Yorkers. We've lived parallel lives. He grew up in Queens. I grew up in New York. We have the same quote-unquote New York values. We care about this country first and foremost. You know, NATO be damned, Europe be damned. The U.S. comes first with us. And I think when I see Donald Trump, and I wrote this to him after one of the debates, when he was under immense attacks from all sides, I saw a spirit in him that drove me to write to him, and I said, Dear Donald, you did great in the debate last night. I have to tell you that I saw George Washington standing in your shoes last night. And I feel that that's the spirit. That's the spirit that he has. And now the funniest thing is, I go to my Facebook page, and you know the famous portrait of George Washington. You know the oil painting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they put up an image of him wearing the Trump hat that says "Make America Great Again." So, while I'm on it, I want to tell you, people are listening to this show from all around the world, and including friends in across the United States and even in Yugoslavia. My friend Vitomir Milosevic is listening. He sent me a message just before the show started, and he's a fellow that really loves America too. You can't believe how many people around the world are involved in our presidential campaign, our presidential election.
How is Trump seen across the seas? I mean, and as a businessman, we know that he's taken kind of kind of as a goofball. But during the politics, during the GOP elections, how is the rest of the world looking at him? Because he was very vocal against Obama, who was popular outside of the U.S. and some corners of the world.
It's split the same way that it is split here. But most people that respond to my Facebook page or email me or call in, most of them hope that Donald Trump can straighten out the situation economically and politically here. Mexicans,
not so much.
No. Mexican Americans
not so much,
who have worked hard, who have earned their position, become citizens. They don't like the denigration of a Mexican identity or of Mexican American, but they understand that Donald Trump is not lying. Criminals, drug dealers are coming through a porous border.
Mm-hmm.
He's not anti-Mexican.
He's not anti-Mexican.
Criminals.
He is not anti-Mexican. He's not anti-black. I put a really amazing video of just...
Look, Donald Trump loves Hispanics. He said so in a picture he sent out on Cinco de Mayo.
The Cinco de Mayo Bowl.
He loves Hispanics.
No, he does.
He hires them. He hires the best.
You guys should come to New
Best
York.
ones.
I worked in the Trump building as a Tai Chi teacher in one of the the health clubs there, and the manager was Puerto Rican.
My condolences.
Many of the workers, many of the concierge managers, teachers. This is all hokum that you're getting on the media, because the media dreads the man that speaks the truth. It's maybe not.
But you just said it was hokum. But you just said it was hokum.
No, the media is hokum. The media is hokum in all the way they're portraying Trump. But they dread a person that will look you in the eye and tells you what he thinks. And when I said truth, the truth is he believes it. He may be wrong about a fact, but he may believe it. But he's telling you what he believes. And the same about Sanders.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be so casual about a fellow who's wrong about a fact, because our whole world depends on facts at the end of the day, not on,
No, the whole world all runs on perception, not facts.
That's right. It runs on mind control operates.
Yeah.
So...
Whatever the CF tells us to do, that's what we do.
Well, do you think the rumor is true that the powers that be are afraid to give Trump the briefing because they just don't trust him mentally?
I could believe that. I don't know if I believe it, but I could believe it.
Mentally, I trust Donald Trump more than Hillary Clinton.
But why do you say that, Robert? Why do you say that? What has Hillary done that makes you feel that she's just not the one for the job?
Because I saw her. I'll tell you.
You see the way she does her hair.
Hold on. Let Robert speak. Go ahead, Robert.
I voted for the Clintons twice. Twice burned, twice wary. They murdered 80 people at Waco. They killed innocent people at Ruby Ridge. They are murderers in my book. They are career criminals. And no matter what the facade and what the mind control apparatus, how they gift wrap them.
So if an operation goes out of control, you blame the president who's at the helm, right?
She was in direct contact with Janet Reno. They were running the show at Waco. They murdered all those people. And that's why I feel so strongly about it.
Well, okay, so I will look into that and see where
Hillary Clinton says.
Let's put that to the side for a second, and let's put Benghazi for a second.
Let's talk about Benghazi.
Which those two things alone, honestly, completely excludes her for the office of president in my book also. But let's look at something that she has said in the past that is contradicting what she says now currently. And you can look this up on YouTube, on Google. Back when Bill Clinton was president, Bill Clinton was very famous for signing the NAFTA agreement. You guys remember that?
That's right.
Yep. Right? Yep. She was completely for NAFTA back then, completely praising that it was going to do great things for not only this country, but for the world. It's a free trade agreement, yada, yada, yada. She was 100% behind it. since she's been running for president, she has been using this speech that she is against NAFTA, that she's been against it from the beginning, that it's been a failed program. That's the lingo she's using now. There is concrete evidence that not only was she for it, but she was promoting it, and her husband's the one that passed the thing. Right. So why is it that she is contradicting so much of herself and flip-flopping from one view to the other? So you have to add Benghazi, add the other incidents, add this to the pile. It keeps piling on and on and on.
You want me to give into my list here?
No, yes, because it piles on the level of BS from this woman.
She picked up on that because Bernie Sanders was pointing it out. And she has been stealing his agenda
completely,
out of convenience. Yes, and so...
Yeah.
But that's what we would want. I mean, if we had any choice, we want
honesty. We want a person who sticks to their guns, who says, come on, "This is what I believe, and I'm sticking to my guns on it."
From the White House.
TPP. I want to stop the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Pact, and the TPIP, which is the one for Europe. Listen, folks, you hear these things, but I don't think that people study them and read them. Mm-hmm. The TPP has 12 countries. And they will allow free trade zones for these 12 countries. And a free trade zone is an area of land that will be given to these countries to create an enclave of that country. The country's laws will hold it. It will not be the United States. China has these already, one in Montana. It's a huge city. They're going to allow 30,000 workers to come into the United States with no background checks.
And pretend they're in China and pretend they're
they will have Chinese laws, and they will be Chinese forts.
Wow.
Or Philippine or...
And who proposed this brilliant idea?
This is in the TPP, but I'm telling you, people don't read the treaties. I scour every source of information, and like the Obamacare bill. Who knew that the Obamacare bill tied the IRS directly to your bank account? Who would approve of that? Who knew that the Obamacare bill has a section 519 519G that ties it to the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act of 1996 for the development of the microchip? The famous RFID.
You know what's sad, Robert? Most of the people in Congress don't know that because they passed that bill without even reading the damn thing.
The bill is the bill is unconstitutional.
Completely.
But isn't that the one they didn't even let them read it until like the day before?
No, the bill was there. They could have read it. They were just like it's 1,000 pages. We don't really want to spend the time reading this thing.
They weren't allowed to divulge what was in it. But who has the time to read 1,000 pages except me? Because I knew it was important. I smelled something really dirty in it. The secrecy about it, the voluminous chapters. But as I went through it, I was going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and then I came across this little paragraph that said it was tied in to the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act of 1996, Section 519G. So I went and I looked up that act, and that deals with the development of the RFID, the radio frequency identification chip. Wow. And then don't forget that Hillary Clinton, during Bill Clinton's first term, was pushing for the Hillary Care of that time. And she was pushing for the development of this chip. And she was using the ruse that it would help find lost children. And they went through the test of the initial radio frequency identifying chip, and they put it in a lot of dogs. So you could, how sweet, you'll never lose your pet. Well, you lost your pet a year later when all these cancers developed and killed the animals because the thing is toxic.
True story.
So all of this is, look, friends, I see us under a tremendous onslaught that's been going on for 20 years, and it's a complete...
Longer,
socialist,
much longer.
Socialist communist takeover of the United States. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Honestly, I think this is going back from the 40s. I'm not even kidding. This is going back to the World War II. When the Nazis lost the war, quote unquote, that's where this communist started. Socialism started taking over this country from that point on.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely.
So none of this shocks me of what's going on. And
if you want to hear something fantastic, G. Edward Griffin. G. Edward Griffin as YouTube videos. In 1984-85, he interviewed a KGB defector named Yuri Bezmenov. And Yuri Bezmenov told G. Edward Griffin the whole plan in 15-year sequences of how they were going to take over America. And the three phases were, the first phase, demoralization. It would take 15 years of demoralization, then 15 years of destabilization, and then comes normalization. Normalization in their vocabulary was the communizing of the nation. And this was a pattern, a plan that they used in all of the countries that they subjugated. The demoralization of the United States began with the John F. Kennedy assassination. The loss of faith, the loss of confidence, the befuddlement, the fooling of the public, the leading us then into the depressions of the Carter era. Then the social upheavals that came in the 80s and the 90s. That's the destabilization. We are a destabilized nation right now. And the normalization in their playbook will be when they can communize the whole country. So that is why I'm totally against Hillary Clinton, globalism. I am America first. I grew up to be an unhyphenated American, and that's what I consider myself. So I'm doing everything in my power to see that Donald Trump gets elected.
And Bernie Sanders is not much better, folks.
If Trump, listen, people ask me the same question.
Well, how about Bernie?
How about Bernie?
Love Bernie.
I take Bernie over Clinton. I'll tell you honestly, because he's a forthright, straight-talking guy. And Clinton is a pathological liar.
That much is true.
That's all I got to tell you. And you know what? Let me say something. The election of Barack Obama was not elected by black and Hispanic people. He was elected by a majority of white people. And the white people, I don't like the term because we're not white. We're more of a pink and rosy red or all various Caucasians. But I consider the election of Barack Obama a vanity vote. The Caucasian population wanted to prove to itself that it wasn't prejudiced, that it wasn't bigoted. And that's why I call it a vanity vote. And the idea of voting for Hillary Clinton simply because she's a woman and everybody wants the first woman, forget it. It's the same kind of vanity vote. So
I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I think Obama was prepared and pre-manufactured to be a president.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I say that is because, Obama fits a demographic that none of us here fits. He is both white, he's both African American, he's a person whose face fits the global structure of the planet. Hell, he looks like Nelson Mandela a little bit. I mean, this person looks like everybody, like the everyman. And when he came out and he did that Democratic speech years ago, where everybody was like, wait a second, who the hell is this guy? I think from that moment on, they said, we have something here that we could use to brainwash the masses and ease some tensions in certain areas. And I think he was prepared and manufactured for that because he was
vetted by the Council on Foreign Relations.
That's right. And he is a very charismatic person, and that's why they picked him and used him. I don't think it's so much that people went out to vote. Not to cut you off, Robert, but I don't think it's so much that people just went out to vote because they found a pretty face. I think it's because people went out to vote, but he was already pre-elected. The vote didn't even matter, I think.
In a way. But don't forget, Nelson Mandela was a communist terrorist. They murdered a lot of white people with their the South African necktie. They would throw rubber tires on a person and then light them up. His wife murdered.
Had a great smile though. He was a nice looking.
Oh yeah, wonderful grandpa. Yeah, but forget about it. I'm not in on
really?
the. I'm on the train with Martin Luther King, and he would never have approved of the tactics of the Democrats today. Let's talk about Saul Alinsky, the playbook for the Democratic Party, Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky was a radical communist who wrote a book called Rules for Radical, and Hillary Clinton did her dissertation on Saul Alinsky. Well, when you open the book and look at the preface, Saul Alinsky dedicated the book to Lucifer, whom he considered the first rebel.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
Check that out.
Okay,
Check
that's
it out.
That's just crazy.
Listen, I'm telling you who these people worship, what they aspire to. Tyranny.
And tell us the name of the book again. So it makes
Rules for Radicals.
Okay.
Saul Alinsky.
Saul.
You know, sometimes
He's the one who came up with the term of community organizer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Saul, like Better Call Saul.
S-A-U-L.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Saul Alinsky.
But sometimes intellectuals, and he was a University of Chicago, I believe, intellectual. Sometimes they throw stuff like that out just to kind of make jokes with the crazy people who think, oh, good and evil. Say, I guess people who take Satan very literally, and I know you're going to say you do. But you don't take him as literally as probably a born-again Christian does, do you?
Right.
You take him as a concept literally, but not as a real live guy.
Let me tell you this. When we're talking about Satan, Lucifer, or the devil, I say we're talking about a bad idea. And a bad idea has power. Because when a bad idea gets into a million heads, really bad things happen. And the perfect example is Hitler's Germany. When Hitlerism got into people's heads and they became a beehive of this kind of thinking, and the same goes for Stalinism and Trotskyism.
And when Donald Trump says from the podium, "Get him, rip him out of here," it makes me feel like it's happening all over again, because the get 'em turns a mob into a killing mob, and it always terrifies me.
Yeah, I could see where people would get a little bit weirded out by that.
Yeah, because you know what happens when a mob
when he's like, "I'll pay for your lawyer bills." I mean, when he says stuff like that, I'm like, "Come on, Donald."
At that point,
well, not only that, he's playing the position of power. Like, look how powerful I am.
That's the man card. Well, I'm the biggest man.
Well, when you inflame a situation, the people fight fire with fire. Just like those pictures of people in Ku Klux Klan outfits at Trump rallies, and they turned out to be black people wearing Ku Klux Klan clothes.
You know what's funny about that? And he got a lot of crap about the He got a lot of crap about the whole KKK endorsement from David Duke. I think it was. The funny thing is, when Obama ran for president, he also was endorsed by the KKK. True story. Nobody said anything, and Obama never even denounced it. Like, he never even brought it up. He just stayed quiet about the whole thing. And he was endorsed. He said, "Hey, better him than Hillary." That's what they said. Better him than Hillary. So think about that for a second. Even the KKK say, "Hey, black guy, better than Hillary." That's crazy. But that's what happened. And Obama didn't say a word, and nobody brought it up. And the funny thing is, Trump denounced David Duke. He, talked about it repeatedly, and people still talk about it.
He had no idea who he was, and you guys don't paint him as a liar. He said he didn't know who he was, and of course he did.
David Duke.
Oh, of course he did.
David Duke left the Ku Klux Klan 30 years ago. It was a very brief period of time. Then he got elected as a congressman from Louisiana, and he actually passed some very good bills while he was in Congress.
But he is a white supremacist.
Once a racist, always a racist. That's the thing. Once a white supremacist, always a white supremacist.
You could be a brown supremacist.
I don't believe in racial supremacy, but I do believe that some cultures are superior to others.
Oh,
that's
really?
my take. Yes, I do.
Superior suggests. I
don't know if I'd use the word superior, but I would say some cultures are more evolved.
I think our American culture is superior to the culture of ISIS. I think our American culture
agree with that.
is superior to the culture.
Hold on, no, I see. Listen to what he's actually saying. He's not talking about races or classifications.
I'm not talking about races, but I'm
right. No, I could see that because we are better than ISIS. Hello,
greater than others. They achieve more. They're more civil. They're more just.
And they're prettier. Others. Some are prettier than others.
We have hotter ladies here in the U.S., that's for sure. Yeah. Then again, we couldn't really tell because they're all covered up over in the Middle East. Like, what's up with that?
There's a book that everyone should... there's a book that I read when I was in college by S.I. Hayakawa, and it was about language, language and social order, but it was about how this was written by a Japanese scholar who learned English and knew Japanese, and he pointed out that we are fooled by the vocabulary and the use of certain words which sound really great to all of us, like liberty, freedom.
Non-fat.
Fat. Go ahead. But
diet.
Each of those words means a different thing to each person who hears it. Each person has a different personal definition of what liberty is, of what freedom is, and he called them high-level abstractions. Those words, high-level abstractions, as opposed to words that were really concrete. For example, words that describe a concrete object or a really clearly defined ideas. And he saw that the rhetoric of American politics is loaded with high-level abstractions that 1 million people will hear and 1 million people will like, but 1 million people will have 1 million different definitions of a high-level abstraction. So isn't it great to be American? This is a great conversation. No, we really, people are afraid to speak out, to say what they think. People have been cowed by political correctness into being afraid to say something controversial.
That's very true. That's very true. And it's sad because, Robert, it's become kind of like a 4-letter word to say that you're proud to be an American.
Oh yeah, and what about white guilt? The white guilt that has been dumped on the Caucasian section of the population.
But 400 years of slavery, they kind of
everybody's evil. Hey, look, 400 years of slavery and the whole idea of reparations, where more than
Today was the anniversary of Hiroshima, and Obama has just, or it's going to be within the day or so.
That's in August 6th and August 9th.
A little earlier.
But he's already making propaganda to make himself the Prince of Peace again. No. August 6th, August 9th, that was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But he's getting started early.
But I have white guilt. I definitely have white guilt about that. I have white guilt about any kind of American Indian movie we see. I mean, it's kind of bred in the bone, to feel bad about this bad stuff.
I'm glad I'm not white.
Well, you've been made to
no guilt.
So bad,
we cannot judge the people of the past by the morals of the present. We've all been evolving. See, slavery was a basic component of economic systems in the 18th and 19th century. It was a given, and the Bible teaches it. You see?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and these were things that they believed. Now, our society has evolved, and our ethics, our morality has been refined, but
I think the reason it lingers so, Robert, I think one of the reasons, but one of the reasons it lingers so long, Robert, is because we're the last ones when it comes to like big societies, big civilizations. We, the United States, are the last ones that have had slavery to that level. For that long.
No, there's slavery today in Saudi Arabia and Muslim countries.
But it's not. I don't think it's to the point that we had it in this country.
There's slavery all over North Africa. There's slavery is institutionalized in Muslim countries. Look at Boko Haram. They enslaved those girls that they're still trying to recover. This is all fallacy. And you buy all this junk that's put into our brains by the mass media trying to dump white guilt on us. And I'm not guilty of the crimes or of slavery. And as far as reparations, more than 500,000 white soldiers on both sides died in the Civil War to end that thing. All right? So don't give me that. I'm sorry. I'm not buying it.
Now, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't ever say that, white people should feel guilty about things that happened in the past. But far as, you maybe a little bit, because we still kind of celebrate Columbus Day, and that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Completely fucked up.
Completely.
But, I mean,
we
completely.
if it wasn't for Columbus.
Well, crap. He wasn't the first one.
But of course, here's an argument.
Come on now. But hang on. But the point that I was going to make is, wouldn't you say that we still have a problem with those issues? So maybe not white guilt, maybe not political correctness, but we still have evolving to do, and we could still all work on being a little bit kinder.
And this is exactly why the aliens won't talk to us.
And this is why Trump should not be allowed to say the stuff he's saying.
Have to stop.
Well, he can say it, but I think people have to stop listening.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. I think the fact political correctness.
But listen, the finger of racism is being pointed all the time, and I say to people, and black people in particular, and who are really jump the gun on pointing the index finger of racism, just remember, when you point the index finger of racism, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. And I have experienced racism from everybody. And so no one's free of bias, and no one's all guilty of racism. The white population, the Caucasian population, has worked to make black people equal. It would never have happened if there was
that's right, and
white supremacist
you can thank a lot of politicians for that as well. Both sides of the aisle were very supportive.
You can thank right, but that okay, but you can absolutely you can say that and still recognize that there is still an issue. So maybe every time a black person says, you know, because there's extremists on every side, we have a tendency to take things to the extremes, but at the same time. I think you have to judge these based on their situations. Yeah. Like, was this true?
Don't like the N-word, but they love to say tidy whitey, Charlie, honky, cracker. Okay? So.
No, but
I like cracker myself. That's a good word.
I like cracker too. That's a great word. But you're making a generalization. It's the same thing. White people have the same terms for black people.
Right.
Yeah, but
how did this UFO show? Hold on. How did this ufology show turn into a racist show?
People got to come to New York. New York, you never hear that stuff. You know.
In New York, you hear all kinds of things.
The N-word it's one black person most of the time calling another one the same that N-word. You know. So
or you have that brave white guy who hangs out with a bunch of black dudes and he's saying it to his friends because they're like, it's not a big deal. You know what's funny though, because I hang out with multiracial people. I'm multiracial. I'm Latin.
I live in New York City, brother.
and exactly, and I see it all the time where the N-word is thrown around by everybody, black, white, Hispanic. Doesn't like in my growing up here in Florida, it didn't matter as much racially as it does in other parts of the country. I think we weren't ever like picking fights with each other because somebody said, hey, my N-word, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just one of those things that was just said by everybody, black and white and Latinos. It was universally used word. In fact, I didn't think it was a big deal as a kid growing up until I saw it in a movie that somebody got shot over the N-word, and I was like, really? And then I started seeing things on the news, and I was like, really? It's a big deal. And then I started doing more research, and I grew up, and I learned the definition of that word and the hatred behind that word and what all that word brings when it's used, which is, to be honest with you, is words like cracker and like honky are like, playing in the playground compared to that word and what that word means and why it's such a hated word and why it should be eradicated from the English language. But to be fair, it is a word that everybody kind of uses universally at this point.
Well, that's the solution since it can't be eradicated.
Just use it universally. Who cares?
From the language, because there are too many people in their own race.
You can't tell people what not to say, and you can't tell people who to like, and you can't tell people
that is
what
the main thing right there. Yep.
It's not going to happen.
It's about the intent behind when you use a word. Because all right, so I consider myself a feminist, but I call my friends. I talk to my best friend. I'm like, hey, bitch, what's up? So it's about.
I'm a male feminist too. I'm a male feminist, and I'm like, hey, bitch, what's up? And I get a different kind of view though when
I know. I'm sorry, boo.
My mother used to say, work the same.
About words. My mother used to say, and it's very true, and Crystal just echoed it. It's the tone, not the tune.
Mm-hmm.
Like that gentleman about 10, 15 years ago, he was the president of a college, African American, and in a dissertation or in a speech, he used the word niggardly, which just simply means cheap. doesn't mean anything racial. And they forced him
I
to
beg to differ because there's a stereotype about black people being kind of cheap with tipping.
No. I don't have that.
Breaking down the walls and barriers for the facts.
I mean, come on.
I don't believe that at all.
We're stereotyped across the board.
Have you ever gone to lunch with your African American friends? I'm just saying.
Yeah, I have.
Look,
not mine.
Here. I can tell you, I used to work on Bourbon Street, and I can tell you who are the worst tippers. Doctors and African Americans don't tip. Gay men tip wonderfully.
Yep, this is true.
That's it. Doctors will not tip you. Fuck them.
Yep.
Doctors will not. Yep. African Americans
Gay,
don't tip well.
gay dudes,
They don't.
hold on. Gay dudes are the greatest people to actually, do a transaction with in any kind of sales job, really, because they are happy that when you treat them nice, they're the happiest people on the planet.
Who were the best people?
Gay men. Gay
men
are fabulous.
I tell you this much in the car business, right? I spent a long time in the car business, know a little bit about this. The best client I ever had was a gay male couple. Why? Because not only were they fabulous to work with, they were very easygoing. They bought the car, came back a week later with their lesbian friends who bought another car. They brought a parent
Subaru.
that bought a car. No, it wasn't a Subaru, but that was funny. But at the end of the year, I ended up selling 6 cars because of this one gay couple that I treated nicely. The thing is, these folks are so used to being treated like shit that when somebody gets them and they're just genuinely nice to people and they just treat them like they're supposed to be treated because they're human beings, for crying out loud, and you just treat them as a human being, they actually are very polite and they reciprocate that, and they actually are very good to deal with.
That's very gay. That's very gay of you.
Thank you.
And that should be a compliment.
I want to say, I had no qualms about flipping out that word because Obama revived and rehabilitated that word earlier this year by flipping.
Well, I'm still trying to get.
The President of the United States can say it. I can say it. Okay.
I'm trying to get Porch Monkey brought back.
See, and it's what you just said right there, Robert, that makes me really afraid for a Donald Trump presidency.
Yeah.
Because what Robert just said, if the president can say it, I can say it. Let me tell you guys something.
About the Second Amendment.
Preach on, Crystal.
Let me tell you about
preach, Crystal. Preach.
That I had in Florida. Okay, this is why, as a short, non-white person, I'm really afraid. I used to.
We got 2 minutes before break. Go ahead.
Real quick. I used to host a trivia night at a bar down here in Port Orange. Okay, we do it live. I read out questions. I've got like 10 teams. They're regulars. They always come to play, and there's this one asshole table. Okay, so they're shouting out answers very politely. I know how to talk to people. I go over there and I'm like, hey, you can't shout out the answers. I love it if you guys played. It's free to play. Blah blah blah. Old white man got in my face to the point, I swear to God, I thought he was going to hit me and cussed me out. And then on the way out, called me a cunt and told me to make sure that I got my green card.
Wow.
That's the type of
You don't even look like an illegal immigrant.
Apparently I do. I look like an illegal immigrant.
Political correctness can really come in handy when people are just shamed by bad behavior. And when they shame others by bad behavior, it's really a good thing.
It really is.
I mean, seriously, if he had lots of friends in the bar,
well, I would hope that somebody stood up for you.
Yes.
But picture after a Trump rally. Picture the bar,
because that's the other part of the story of the anecdote that you're telling. You know,
but not to him. It wasn't to him. It was after he had left. People came up to me very quietly and said, I hope you're okay.
But I can assure you, if it had gotten to that.
If he had, he's got to
somebody, I
jumped in.
I'm the kind of person
But it's not even about the after effect. It's about Donald Trump gives a voice to people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's really the problem that I have with him. I can appreciate that he's, he doesn't, he says it like it is. He's apparently saying what's on everybody's mind, which is kind of scary. But that's the type of
there is a very, very important. Let me say, there's a very important video on YouTube it's a testimonial by a black police officer in Arizona who went to a Trump rally expecting the worst. He got dressed normally, and he went there with a sense of dread.
I saw that. Yep.
And the man tells you what it's really like. The media is editing tapes and photoshopping pictures.
Yeah, but the media is not. The media puts its camera right on its talking.
No, Nancy, I suggest you watch that video. I saw the video he's talking about.
I will. Right.
You should watch it. If you guys want to call in and give us your 2 cents, 786-245-8127. Don't be scared. Don't be put off. It's, this is reality. This is realism radio for the masses. This is Skywatchers radio. And switching topics a little bit, even though it's been a very interesting debate so far, or very interesting subjects so far, I heard through a little birdie that sang in my ear earlier that you are involved in a movie with the Grandmaster of Kung Fu, Karate, Tai Chi, and all the martial arts put together, Mr. Bruce Lee himself.
Yeah, he appears in an interview in a film that opened last Friday in Los Angeles. It's playing through this week at the Laemmle Music Hall, Laemlle.
Laemmle. I love the Laemmle.
Oh, for those who don't know who Laemmle was, Carl Laemmle was one of the great producers and filmmakers of the 1930s, and we know him best for his classics, Frankenstein with Boris Karloff, and Dracula.
Well, this is the Laemmle in New York, right?
No, it's Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. There's never been one in New York, I guess.
No, I've never seen one in New York.
Yeah, because Bill and I always used to go to those.
Here in June. But I'm very proud to be part of it. I've been studying Tai Chi for 45 years now. And I was very fortunate to be the last student of the late Grandmaster Cheng Man-ching. And this is a biography of Professor Cheng Man-ching, who was known as the master of the five excellences, and he's the one who brought Tai Chi to America. So it's called The Professor, Tai Chi's Journey to the West. And it deals with how he broke the taboo of the Chinese culture that no Westerners should be taught martial arts because it was betrayal of a cultural secret. And the same thing happened with Bruce Lee. If you see his films, the biographies of him, he had a lot of trouble with traditional Chinese martial artists who felt he was betraying the culture by teaching Americans. And some of the Americans that he taught were James Coburn and my classmate Kareem Jabbar.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, yeah.
I went to school with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
You went to school with Kareem? No kidding.
What? You lie.
I'm not lying.
You're making that up.
Just because you went to school.
Cross your finger and cross your heart and hope to die.
I went to Power Memorial Academy. And I was about 5'8", when I was 15.
Yeah, and he's like 20 foot tall, like that.
And he was 7'1"
man.
already. So he was a junior when I was a freshman. And
his original name was Lou Alcindor, wasn't it?
Lou Alcindor, of course. We all called him Lou. Hey, Lou, how you doing? So listen to this. We used to have to go through floors. It was a six-story building, and the classrooms were from the second floor to the fifth floor. So we used to have to go shuttling between floors to change classes. And one year, his schedule and my schedule were really just in sync. He had to come down as I had to go up, or vice versa. And then I would be hustling to class, and I'd open the door and walk through, and I'd see a belt buckle in front of my head.
Just like a girl.
I'd look straight up, and then there'd be Lou looking down at me, and he'd give me this look like, "Come on, kid. I'm 7'1", you're 5'8". Who do you think ought to move out of the way?" Okay,
excellent logic.
Did you think back then that this guy's destined to go pro in the NBA?
Oh, he was the greatest in the country then. We were the national champions. We were we were real jocks. Everybody played basketball at Power Memorial, and
there's a beautiful biography on either Showtime or HBO. Lou Alcindor, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar biography. For a good chance to watch it.
While I'm at it, I really want to say I cherish my years at Power Memorial Academy, and I thank God that his coach at Power was my coach, and he ingrained in us a dedication and a love of athleticism and physical discipline that is still carrying me to this day. And his name was Jack Donahue, and he became the coach after Lou graduated. Jack Donahue became the coach at Holy Cross College, and then about 10 years later, I was watching the Olympics, and the Canadian national Olympic team was playing, and Jack Donahue was their coach, and I was thrilled. And I said to everybody, "Hey, everybody, That's Jack Donahue. He was my coach in high school. And I can tell you something about every player on that basketball team. They're all wearing 2 pairs of socks. And the inner sock is a white cotton sock. Because when the first day that I went into gym at Fowler Memorial, Jack Donahue was my coach. And he said, gentlemen, this is your first class. You're here to learn athletics. But I'm going to require one thing. Do not come to class unless you're wearing 2 pairs of socks. And the inner sock has to be a cotton tube sock. And he went, what? 2 pairs of socks? What is that? He said, gentlemen, I have taught basketball for 20 years, and I have seen men get blisters and blood poisoning wearing a colored sock. The blister breaks, the ink runs, it gets infected. You wear 2 pairs of socks and you will never have a corn, you will never have a blister, because when the stop and go skidding happens, the socks will take the abrasion and not your foot. And ever since that day, I have worn 2 pairs of socks, and I'm wearing them.
Robert, real quick, we've had a question from the chat room, and we've had it for a while, and I promised that I'd get it in. The question was, do you think the USA is a breakaway civilization?
I think the USA has a breakaway civilization, and we are the first tier breakaway civilization, and we're the second tier. We get the stuff 10 years behind, That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. We are. We're far, far ahead technologically than the rest of the world. But
so just 10 years, you say?
In some ways, some things.
Well, do you believe in that breakaway stuff or not breakaway, but the jump room to Mars? You go into an elevator, or the Bishago story about.
You know what? Let me say this about what you just said. I don't know how to take it, but on April 1st, in the U.S. Army Times, the official magazine of the U.S. Army, an Army general said that the Army had perfected teleportation. Now, this also dovetails with what we were talking about earlier, disclosure. Disclosure is happening in drips and drabs. And just last month, General Mark Miley, Chief of Staff of the United States Army, spoke to a group of ROTC graduates in Pennsylvania, and he said something very strange to them. He said that this generation of officers was going to have to fight wars, land wars, terrorism, little green men, and high-tech wars, all at the same time. And the people in the know all of us who read that said, "Whoa, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or General Miley, a member of the Chief of Staff, vice chairman of the Chief of Staff, he would never say anything like that without an intention, an idea behind it." And if you study the work of Carol Rosen, who's worked with Werner von Braun, Werner von Braun warned her that we would have to fight wars, and these would be the excuses for maintaining the military-industrial complex, and that after the Cold War there would be a war on terrorism, and then that we would have to fight aliens from outer space. So General Mark Miley bringing up this subject of this generation of Army officers would have to fight little green men, and then Stephen Bassett talking about disclosure and Hillary Clinton and all that. It's happening. I've said to people, I don't care if the government tells us about UFOs. It's ultimately we who are going to tell the government that we all know it already. And it doesn't really matter. It's as long as we're prepared mentally and physically and psychologically for it. Because the great fear goes back to 1939 and the Orson Welles broadcast.
That is right. Yep. For the world
caused panic in New Jersey and New York. And so they took that.
But it actually didn't. That was a RAND study. That was a test, and they pumped it up to pretend that was the case. But in fact, in real life, this background was something we uncovered for UFO Magazine a while ago. And there's stories in the magazine. I can get it for you. So that's that's a myth that has held. It's not true. People were kind of lackadaisical. It's hard to get people in New Jersey in October out of their houses for anything, really. It's cold. It's wet. It's icky. And so I can get you the article. And then maybe you might,
Sure. But
because,
the war fears were really great in those days. But you know what? These sonic booms that I described that happened in Yorkshire on May 2nd did panic people. And read the accounts. They did think that it was atomic war or terrorists, and panic is a reality. People who are not psychologically prepared for the unexpected will react in various negative ways. So, but then once they had that as the excuse, they used that as the excuse to put the lid on the reverse engineering, on the extraterrestrial interaction with human beings, on the abductions, on the cattle mutilations. I really don't think that the government can come clean and say we knew about it 70 years ago, because then they're liable.
At this point.
They're liable for those 30,000.
This UFO field that supposedly Chris Matthews was wondering about tonight, this UFO field has been adamant about climate change, for example, for all these years. We've been adamant about the government not telling us the truth for all these years. I have a feeling when these what do you call these things? These campaigns come to us, they may find that we're not as crazy as, Trump may embrace us.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the fringe conspiracy wackos are becoming the guys who are
I think it's important. I think it's even important now because if a level of disclosure is coming, you need people like us and Robert and Stephen Bassett out there
to live with it.
And dissecting the truth, so you don't have people running outside with their shotguns ready to go to war. Like social media or like the mainstream media will have you doing.
Here's a question for Robert. Robert, here's a question for you, real quick. Sure, dealing with the War of the Worlds broadcast. Do you believe, because a lot of what I think happens in this society is manipulated by the powers that be, and I have a strong conviction, a strong feeling that broadcast was put out there for mind manipulation purposes, and it wasn't just a regular radio broadcast. Do you think there's any chance that was done to test the waters, and they told him to do the broadcast the way that he did it?
No,
No, it's true.
Orson Welles got into a lot of trouble. Orson
was
in a lot of trouble and had to testify before Congress about it.
Let me ask Bill about that, because Bill has done some research, and as I said, there was an entire article about it, and I think the truth will surprise you. But I think it was all showbiz, and I think Orson Welles was in on it.
I think so too. That would make perfect sense, because look, you have all the domino effect that happened after that broadcast and after the war and after 47. You have this domino effect that just kept, escalating, and the conspiracy got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it really is all mind manipulation by the government. I think this.
Well, you've seen
I think they do it all the time. Absolutely.
I think they do.
Operation Chicken Coop, I believe, was the name of a program that was all about just throwing something at the public to see how they would react to it.
Well, and the movie Wag the Dog talks about this, and it's very chilling. And then there's the whole, that we know that there was a whole faked stuff with a baby in a bassinet or something in a war zone, and we all thought, oh my God, So both sides do it, but we're manipulated. We're fearful. I mean, if suddenly I heard a lot of planes overhead, I would immediately think the worst, because we're bred. We're bred to think this could all end in a flash. The electricity goes out for good, which is a great
divide and conquer. You have to, because when we start thinking and connecting with each other, then that's it. That's a wrap. You're done.
We're almost out of time, but before we leave, I do have a couple of questions that I've got emailed to us through the A-Hole Blast, and I wanted to go over them real quick. And I think Robert should be in on this, because I think Robert would have actually maybe some good input on some of these questions. One here is from a gentleman named Peter. He wants to know, how far do you think the cover-up to Roswell goes, and do you think that was an actual alien crash?
Yes. I know a lady, as a matter of fact, I know a lady who knew his son General Twining was the Army general in charge of the investigation, and she was friends of the family and knew his son. And his son told her, yes, my father told me it was a real crash and there really were aliens.
All right, there you go.
That's I believe it is. It's true.
But how far do you think this cover-up goes? I mean, how deep is the cover-up at this point?
Because the CIA, the CIA was in charge of UFO cover-up on all of the external events, UFO events outside the United States. And they got fed information by the FBI and the Air Force.
And the NSA was born the same year of the Roswell crash.
That's right. And that's a result. It's a direct result of it. But they had to keep a lid because science would be crippled. You know, science is. If you read the Brookings Institute report, the Brookings report on the peaceful uses of outer space. They determined that if we found evidence of alien existence on the moon, either in the past or current activity, that they shouldn't tell the public because it would destabilize science. They said that scientists would be so depressed
I've heard that.
Catching up with a civilization that was 200, 300 years ahead.
But this is just a theory, though, right?
I would buy that. Science.
It's their theory about what would happen to scientists.
No, it would just destabilize science.
But it doesn't say there was stuff on the moon. Whereas at the back of the Corso book, I believe, is reprinted the entire Project Horizon, which was in the 50s. We were going to build a base on the moon. We were set to go.
An Army moon base, yes. And
who says we haven't?
Exactly.
I do believe
who says we haven't?
And I feel I
think so too.
Of it.
Iron Sky.
Another question here for the
fun movie.
Another question here for the A-hole blast we have from Larry. He wants to know whatever happened to the Romanek case. Is there any? Has there been any follow-up to the Romanek case? And I don't think he means the actual alien in the window. I think he means the actual child pornography case. Anybody know anything about what's going on with Romanek?
No, it just died in the press. I think that was just to discredit the whole Romanek UFO experience. You know, that happens, and it's also a way of silencing other people. You know, the threat. So I don't know much about it. I didn't hear any more after I heard about the arrest. And
I think there's a little bit more than that. When he supposedly confronted the police, and the police took him over to where his wife was, he was like, "Oh, they hear about that child pornography stuff on the computers again." And he just had a bunch of child pornography. I don't know. That whole case is, it's...
No, I don't know anything else about that.
But moving on, we have another question here from Herbert. He wants to know, do you guys think that Hitler escaped the war and went to the Arctic, as some people believe?
I want to say that the other night I was on a program, and the host started reading the FBI memo, and I had to smile because I found that memo a year and a half ago, and I broke the story on Coast to Coast with George Noory. The FBI received a letter from an Argentine citizen in great detail saying that he had been hired to pack a mule train and meet some Germans off two submarines that landed off the coast of Argentina, that they trekked inland to a safe house for 10 days, and that Hitler and Eva Braun and 50 other Germans were there, and he did survive. Then... remember that they talked about having found the burnt bodies in the bunker? Well, the skull was taken by the Russians. The Russians seized the corpses and the bodies, and they sent them to Moscow. And in 1997, the skull that was purported to be the skull of Adolf Hitler with the bullet hole in it was tested by the Russians, and it turned out to be the skull of a woman. So
no kidding.
Yeah, so there was a great, great dread because, people...
that's interesting. Hold on, that's interesting that it might have been a woman's body masquerading as Hitler because he did have a micro penis, so you can never tell.
I don't know about that. I'm
not even kidding. This is not even me trying to make a joke. This is an actual true story.
How do you know
Google it.
How do you know?
I wasn't there when they showed it to the world. Google this. Google this. This is an actual fact. Supposedly he had a micro penis. Go ahead.
Well, listen, that's not important, but this is.
Well, depending on the woman.
You all know Wendell Stevens, right? Wendell Stevens?
He has a micro penis too?
No, he was a colonel in the United States Air Force. He saw UFOs in Alaska.
Correct.
With the Strategic Air Command. He wrote a book on Billy Meyer, extraterrestrials from the Pleiades. But Wendell Stevens went down to South America, and he claimed to have met Hitler twice and to have sat in on a mass that Hitler officiated because he disguised himself as a Catholic priest. And I've heard, I got this story.
Isn't he dead now, Wendell Stevens?
Yeah, he died, but I got this story from a U.S. Air Force colonel who knew him very well and was a very good friend of mine. And I believe it. And that with the memo and the dread that the world had about Hitler. Stalin didn't want anybody to know that Hitler survived. Truman didn't want anybody because people would consider that we didn't win the war. If we didn't get Hitler, we didn't really win the war.
That's correct.
Apparently, and with the operation, with the spinner, the Odessa file, if you see the movie, you'll understand. The Odessa file tells how Martin Bormann and the rest of the Nazis got tremendous amount of money into Argentina. Tremendous amount of technology was delivered there and to Antarctica by submarines. And the UFOs that were overflying the United States may have been German and reptilian craft, because I recently watched a program with William Tompkins, and he's an old timer who goes back to the 1940s, and he was with the Army, and he saw the documents. And the Germans were contacted by an extraterrestrial race that gave them the technology, and it's just by luck and the grace of God that we were able to overwhelm Nazi Germany. But the principles escaped, and it may be that this Nazi organization actually killed President Kennedy.
And I think some of them infiltrated this country. And
yes,
Hail Hydra. We're all out of time, folks. Unfortunately, if now we can go on for another hour and a half.
Well, that person would be worse than. Finally, we found someone worse than Hillary Clinton.
There we go.
Hitler. Hitler. That's about it.
Yeah. Our question earlier, by the way, everybody, I have to give this person a shout out.
I know. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Our question earlier was from Divine Testicles.
Awesome name. Yeah. That's the best name I've ever seen in a chat
room name ever.
Ever.
Win.
Chat room name of the year.
I think all our other listeners are slacking with their chat room names and they need to step up their game.
I agree 110% on that. Robert, thank you so much for being with us this hour here. And real quick, give us, again, any website addresses you want to promote, anything coming up that you want to promote, that you want people to keep an eye out?
Sure. I'm going to be teaching a seminar in remote viewing and lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences at the Edgar Cayce Center in New York City, 241 West 30th Street. Google Edgar Cayce Center and come around in June and learn how to do remote viewing.
Very nice.
And don't forget the movie, The Professor.
Don't forget The Professor, the movie, exactly. Guys, this is Skywatchers Radio. We're out of time, unfortunately, but we'll be back next week. Same PSN radio channel, same PSN radio time. Stick with us. Hope you had a good time tonight. Hopefully you enjoy what's coming up next. We'll catch you next week. Good night, everybody.